The great crystal dome of the Galactic Council Station floated in the darkness between stars, its surface glowing with soft blue light. Inside the massive structure, representatives from dozens of alien species gathered in the main chamber. The air buzzed with tension and fear. Council leader Vel stood at the center podium, his tall gray form trembling as he addressed the crowd. Behind him, a giant holographic display showed images that made many aliens look away in horror. Burning planets, destroyed space stations, millions of dead bodies floating in the void. The war has gone on for 312 years, Vel announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Every attempt at peace has failed. The Velkari Empire and the Theran Republic refuse to stop fighting. They are destroying everything in their path. In the viewing sections, younger alien species watched with wide eyes. Many of them had never known a galaxy without this terrible war. The Velkari and Theran had once been friends and trading partners, but a simple disagreement over mining rights in a distant star system had grown into pure hatred. Now, neither side could even remember why they started fighting. Commander Zix of the peacekeeping forces stepped forward. Her blue skin was pale with exhaustion. We have lost 14 mediation fleets this year alone. Both sides attack anyone who tries to make peace. They see negotiators as enemies. The hologram changed to show recent battle footage. Velkari warships, sleek and silver, fired energy beams at Theran vessels that looked like giant metal insects. The space between them filled with explosions and debris. In the background, a planet burned. They are using planet-killer weapons now, whispered Dr. Mora, the Council's chief scientist. Her tentacles shook as she spoke. Entire worlds are being destroyed just to deny them to the enemy. Billions of innocent people are dying. Old historian Kef shuffled forward on his 6 legs. His ancient body was supported by floating devices that helped him move. The chamber grew quiet as he approached the speaking platform. Everyone respected Kef. His memory banks contained knowledge from thousands of years of galactic history. There are old stories, Kef said slowly. His voice was weak, but everyone listened carefully. Legends from the early days of our civilization, tales of a species that could end any war. Several council members made sounds of disbelief. Counselor Hex, whose crystal body flashed red with anger, spoke up. We need real solutions, not fairy tales from the past. But Kef continued. The ancient records call them humans. They came from a small blue world in what was once known as the Sol system. Every story agrees on one thing: when humans arrived at a conflict, that conflict ended always. What happened to them? Asked Vel, leaning forward with interest. The records become unclear about 8,000 years ago. Their world was marked as restricted in all navigation charts. No ships were allowed to go there. Most historians believe they destroyed themselves in their own wars, but the stories about them, the stories say they were different from any other species. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some aliens believed they should try anything to stop the war. Others said they were wasting time on myths. But as they argued, another report came in. The Velkari had just destroyed 3 more Theran colony worlds. 15 billion people were dead. Counselor Yara, whose people had lost their homeworld to the war, stood up slowly. What did these humans do that was so special? She asked quietly. Kef accessed his oldest memory files. The records are damaged, but they all say the same thing. Humans did not make peace treaties. They did not negotiate. They did not try to make enemies become friends. They simply ended things. When they decided a war should stop, it stopped. How is that possible? Demanded Commander Zix. I do not know, Kef admitted. The records only say that humans understood something about conflict that no other species did. They saw war not as a political problem or a military problem, but as something else entirely. The debate continued for hours. Some aliens called it desperate foolishness. Others pointed out that they had tried everything else. Traditional diplomacy had failed. Military intervention had failed. Economic sanctions had failed. Even threats from the entire galactic community had been ignored. Finally, Vel called for silence. We are facing the end of civilized life in this galaxy, he said gravely. If this war continues, it will spread until every world is burning. We must try everything, even old legends. But how do we contact a species that vanished 8,000 years ago? Asked Dr. Mora. Kef smiled for the first time in decades. We send a message to their last known location. If any humans still exist, they will hear it. And if the stories are true, they will come. The vote was close, but desperation won over skepticism. Within hours, the Council's most powerful communication array was preparing to send a signal across the galaxy. The message was simple. To the species known as humans, we need your help. The galaxy is dying. As the signal launched into the darkness, no one knew they had just summoned something far more dangerous than the war they were trying to stop. The massive communication array stretched across 3 star systems, its crystal towers humming with power as they prepared to send the Council's desperate message into the void. Chief Technician Borg checked the settings one final time, his forearms moving quickly over the control panels. Signal strength at maximum, he reported to the waiting Council members, broadcasting on all known frequencies across the entire galaxy. The message was short but carried the weight of billions of lives. To the species known as humans, the galaxy burns. We need your help. Please respond if you still exist. The signal launched into hyperspace, racing through the dark between stars. Most Council members had already returned to their duties, convinced this was a waste of time and resources. Only a few true believers remained to monitor the communication station. Days passed with no response. Then weeks. Counselor Hex visited the station regularly, her crystal form flashing with satisfaction. I told you this was foolish, she said, to anyone who would listen. Chasing ghosts while the galaxy dies. But old historian Kef never left his post. He sat in the monitoring room, watching the empty screens with patient eyes. They will answer, he whispered to himself. The stories say they always answer calls for help. On the 43rd day, something impossible happened. Technician Borg was half asleep at his station when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. He jumped up, his multiple eyes wide with shock. The main screen showed a signal coming in, but not through their hyperspace network. This is impossible, Borg muttered, checking his instruments. The signal is coming through old radio waves, primitive electromagnetic transmission. Who still uses such ancient technology? The message was brief and sent chills through everyone. Who heard it? Message received. Help is coming. Arrival in 3 days. 3 days. The fastest ships in the galaxy would take months to cross the distance to the Sol system. How could anyone travel so quickly? Kev smiled mysteriously when asked, but said nothing. Council Leader Vel called an emergency meeting. This could be a trick, he warned. Someone might be pretending to be these mythical humans. Or, suggested Dr. Mora, we might be about to meet a species with technology far beyond our understanding. They did not have long to wonder. On the 3rd day, the station's sensors went completely silent. Not broken or damaged, just silent, as if nothing existed in the space around them. Then, without any warning or energy signature, a small ship simply appeared in the main docking bay. Security teams rushed to the bay, weapons ready. What they found confused them more than any enemy could have. The ship was small, barely large enough for a few passengers. It had no visible weapons, no energy shields, no advanced technology that they could detect. It looked almost primitive compared to galactic standard designs. 5 beings stepped out of the craft. They walked on 2 legs, like several species in the galaxy, but their appearance was unique. They had pale skin, dark hair, and stood about 2 meters tall. They wore simple gray uniforms with no insignia or decoration. The leader was female. She approached the security team with calm confidence, showing no fear of their weapons. When she spoke, her words were in perfect galactic standard, despite her species supposedly being isolated for thousands of years. I am Ambassador Lee Da-un, she said simply. We received your message about the war. We are here to help. The security captain, a large reptilian named Voss, stared at her in disbelief. You're actually humans. We are, she replied. Behind her, the other 4 humans stood quietly. There was something about their presence that made the security team uncomfortable. They seemed too calm, too confident, like predators pretending to be harmless. "This is Commander Park Ji-ho," the ambassador continued, indicating a stern-faced male. "Dr. Kim So-ra, our conflict specialist. Analyst Choi Min-ki, our information expert. And specialist Yoon Tai-min." The last human said nothing, but his presence seemed to fill the entire docking bay. Several security guards stepped backward without knowing why. Within an hour, the council chamber was packed with aliens eager to see the legendary humans. Many were disappointed. These beings looked so ordinary, so unremarkable. Where were the advanced weapons, the intimidating appearance, the signs of superior technology? "You really came," whispered Kef, tears in his ancient eyes. "After all these years, you really came." Ambassador Lee turned to address the full council. "You called for help ending a war. We are here to end it." "But how?" demanded Councillor Hex. "You are only 5 beings. You have no army, no weapons that we can see. How can you stop a conflict that has raged for centuries?" Dr. Kim So-ra stepped forward, and for the first time she smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We do not stop wars the way you might expect. We do not negotiate peace treaties or arrange ceasefires. We end conflicts by making them impossible to continue." "What does that mean?" asked Vel nervously. "It means," said Commander Park, his voice cold as space, "that when we are finished, both sides will no longer have the ability to fight. Not because they choose peace, but because war will no longer be an option." The chamber fell silent. There was something in the human's tone that promised terrible efficiency. Ambassador Lee looked around at the assembled aliens with eyes that seemed to see through everything. "Before we begin," she said quietly, "you should understand something about my species. We do not create peace, we eliminate the sources of conflict permanently." The council members realized they had summoned something far more dangerous than they had imagined. For 28 days, the humans did something that confused everyone at the council station. They locked themselves away in the deepest archives and began reading. Not just reading, consuming information at speeds that should have been impossible for any living being. Dr. Bex, the station's head librarian, watched the data logs with growing amazement. Her 6 eyes blinked rapidly as she tried to understand what she was seeing. "They have accessed 300 years of war records in just 1 week," she reported to Council Leader Vel. "Military reports, battle plans, casualty lists, everything." "Perhaps they are looking for weaknesses in both armies," suggested Commander Zix. But Dr. Beck shook her head, her tentacles writhing with confusion. "That is what makes no sense. They are not reading military files. They spend most of their time studying economic reports, family structures, educational systems, and entertainment media. Yesterday, they requested all available psychological profiles of Velkari and Theron leaders." Vel frowned. "Why would they care about such things?" "I do not know. But the pattern is disturbing. It is as if they are trying to understand the very souls of both species." Through the sealed archive doors, the council could hear only the soft humming of data processors working constantly. The humans never asked for food breaks or sleep periods. They simply worked day and night, absorbing centuries of information. Old historian Kef spent hours outside the archive entrance, listening to the sounds within. "They learn differently than we do," he told anyone who would listen. "We study individual facts and try to build understanding. They seem to absorb entire civilizations at once." On the 15th day, something changed. The humans began requesting different types of information: personal communications between leaders, banking records, trade agreements, corporate ownership documents. They wanted to know who made money from the war and how much profit was involved. "Now they are studying war economics," reported Dr. Bex. "They have accessed every financial transaction between military contractors and both governments for the past 50 years. Councillor Hex visited the archives daily, her crystal form flashing with impatience. "What are they doing in there?" We called them to stop a war, not to become historians. But Kef understood something the others did not. They are not just learning about the war, he said quietly. They are learning about the people who benefit from the war continuing. On the 28th day, the archive doors finally opened. The 5 humans emerged looking exactly as they had when they entered. No signs of tiredness, no indication that they had just spent nearly a month absorbing the equivalent of entire libraries. They simply walked out as if they had been gone for a few minutes. Ambassador Lee approached the waiting council members carrying a small tablet. Her expression was neutral, but there was something new in her eyes, a cold understanding that made several aliens step backward. "We have finished our analysis," she announced simply. The council chamber quickly filled as word spread that the humans were ready to act. Aliens from dozens of species gathered to hear what the legendary conflict enders had discovered. "The Velkari Empire and Theran Republic are not fighting over territory," Lee began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "They are not fighting over resources or trade routes or ancient insults. They are fighting because war has become their reason for existing." She activated her tablet, and a complex diagram appeared on the main display screen. It showed a web of connections so intricate that many aliens felt dizzy looking at it. "Both civilizations have built their entire societies around continuous conflict," explained analyst Choi Min-ki, stepping forward. "War is not something they do. War is what they are." The diagram showed connections between military industries, political parties, media companies, educational institutions, and even religious organizations, all of them somehow connected to the ongoing conflict. Dr. Kim So-ra pointed to specific parts of the web. On the Velkari side, 47 major corporations exist solely to supply military equipment. These companies employ 18 million people. If peace came tomorrow, all of these jobs would disappear. "The same pattern exists in Theran space," added Commander Park. "Military contractors, weapons manufacturers, propaganda networks, logistics companies, millions of people whose families have worked in war-related industries for generations." Counselor Yara leaned forward, her scaled face showing confusion. "But surely they would welcome peace. Surely they are tired of the death and destruction." Specialist Yoon Taemin spoke for the first time since arriving at the station. His voice was quiet but somehow filled the entire chamber. "The people dying in the war are not the people profiting from the war." The simple statement hit the council like a physical blow. Ambassador Lee continued the explanation. "The soldiers who die come from poor families. The civilians who suffer live on border worlds with no political power. But the people who decide whether the war continues, military leaders, corporate executives, politicians, they live safely on home worlds, growing wealthy from the conflict." "You are saying they want the war to continue?" asked Vel, his voice barely a whisper. "We are saying they need the war to continue," corrected Dr. Kim. "Their power, their wealth, their entire social status depends on the conflict never ending. Peace is not just undesirable for them. It is catastrophic." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. This was not a war that could be ended through negotiation or military victory. This was a war that would continue forever because too many powerful people profited from it. "So, what do we do?" asked Commander Zix desperately. Ambassador Lee's expression remained calm, but her next word sent chills through every alien present. "We remove their ability to profit from war. Permanently." The human ship moved through space like a ghost. Velkari and Theran sensors could not detect it. Military patrols passed within kilometers without noticing anything unusual. The small vessel visited battle zones where armies had fought for decades, factory worlds where weapons were made day and night, and command centers where war plans were created. But the humans were not watching the fighting. They were studying something else entirely. "Financial transfer completed," reported analyst Choi Min-ki from his station inside the ship. "Velkari Military Industries just charged their own government 5 billion credits for plasma rifles. The actual cost to make them was 800 million. "Marked for adjustment," replied Dr. Kim So-ra, her fingers moving over control panels that seemed to bend light around them. Add it to the profit network. What the Council did not know was that the humans were not just watching the war. They were quietly entering every computer system, every communication network, every financial database in both empires. Their technology worked on principles that galactic science had never seen. Inside their ship, walls displayed rivers of glowing information. The humans had mapped every business deal, every political alliance, every personal relationship that kept the war machine running. It looked like a living organism made of greed and power. Beautiful, is it not? Dr. Kim asked as Ambassador Lee joined her at the main display. 3 centuries of war, and it all comes down to simple mathematics. Remove the right numbers and the entire system falls apart. Beginning the process, announced Specialist Yoon Tai-min, his quiet voice somehow carrying enormous authority. The first phase began with small accidents. A computer error in the Valkyrie. Treasury caused military payment systems to fail across 20 star systems. For the first time in decades, soldiers did not receive their wages. At the same time, a glitch in Theron supply networks caused food shipments meant for military bases to be delivered to civilian populations instead. Weapons factories on both sides began experiencing mysterious technical problems. Assembly lines that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly started producing defective equipment. Quality control systems that had never failed began rejecting 90% of all military hardware. "What is happening to our weapons production?" demanded Valkyrie General Korth during an emergency meeting with his staff. "System failures across all manufacturing centers," reported his aide, confusion clear in his voice. "But sir, the failures are too coordinated to be random. Someone is sabotaging our entire military industry." But there were no signs of sabotage, no evidence of enemy attacks. The systems simply stopped working properly. Production schedules collapsed. Supply chains broke down. Communication networks developed delays that turned organized battles into confused disasters. Commander Park Ji-ho monitored the reports from his command station aboard the human ship. Old historian Kef had been allowed to observe their operations, and he watched in fascination and growing horror. "You are not attacking their armies," Kef observed. "You are attacking their ability to have armies." "Exactly," Park replied calmly. "Your civilizations built their entire societies around continuous war. We are not fighting their soldiers. We are destroying the systems that make soldiers possible." "But how are you doing this? We see no weapons, no invasions, no direct attacks." "Doctor," Kim turned from her console, that disturbing smile wider than ever. "Information is the most powerful weapon, Doctor, and we now control all of theirs." On both sides of the conflict, populations began learning things they were never supposed to know. Military budget documents were leaked, showing that more money went to generals' luxury homes than to soldier equipment. Corporate records revealed that the same companies were selling weapons to both sides of the war. Political communications were exposed, showing leaders laughing about the useful fools dying for their profit. But the true genius of the human method was not in exposing corruption. It was in making war unprofitable. Every arms dealer found their bank accounts frozen due to computer errors. Every war profiteer discovered their assets seized for tax problems. Every politician who supported the conflict found themselves facing angry populations, armed with the truth about where their money really went. The most devastating blow came when the humans released complete financial records, showing exactly how much money each leader had made from the war. Valkyrie citizens learned that their beloved General Vorth owned 17 luxury palaces, while their sons died with broken equipment. Theron populations discovered that Admiral Kex had sold military supplies meant for their own forces to private collectors. "The profit margins are disappearing," reported Choi Min-ki as he watched economic data streams. "Both sides are discovering that war is no longer financially sustainable." Within 90 days, something unprecedented happened. The Valkyrie Theron war did not end with a peace treaty or military victory. It ended because neither side could afford to continue fighting. Battle fleets sat in harbors because fuel companies could no longer make money selling them energy. Armies remained in barracks because weapons manufacturers had lost their financing. Command centers fell silent because the political leaders who ordered attacks were too busy dealing with revolution at home. Impossible, whispered Counselor Hex as reports came in from across the galaxy. A war cannot just stop. But Ambassador Lee, monitoring everything from the human ship, knew better. Every war can stop, she said quietly. You just have to remove the reasons it continues. The galaxy's greatest conflict was ending not through noble peace negotiations, but through the systematic destruction of everything that made war profitable. And the humans were just getting started. The silence in the Galactic Council chambers was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. For 312 years, war reports had flowed in daily from the Velkari-Theron conflict. Battle. Updates, casualty numbers, destroyed worlds. The constant stream of bad news had become normal background noise. Now there was nothing. Council leader Vel sat at his desk, staring at empty message screens. His gray hands trembled as he checked the communication systems again and again. Are you certain the networks are functioning? He asked his aide for the 10th time that morning. Yes, sir. All systems are working perfectly. There are simply no new battle reports to receive. Across the galaxy, something impossible was happening. Velkari battle fleets sat motionless in their harbors, unable to fuel their ships. Theron armies remained in their barracks, their weapons stockpiles mysteriously empty. The greatest war in galactic history had not ended with victory or defeat. It had simply stopped. Ambassador Lee Dayun stood before the assembled council, her expression as calm as the day she had arrived. Behind her, the other 4 humans prepared to leave. Their work was finished. The war is over, she announced simply. But how? Demanded Counselor Hex, her crystal form flickering with confusion. There were no peace talks, no surrender ceremonies, no treaties signed. Both sides just stopped shooting. Dr. Kim Sora stepped forward, consulting a data tablet. War requires resources, Counselor. Remove the resources and war becomes impossible. The Velkari Empire and Theron Republic discovered that their military systems could no longer function without proper funding. You bankrupted them? Asked Counselor Yara, her scaled face showing shock. We eliminated the profit from war, corrected analyst Choi Min-ki. Every financial system, every business relationship, every economic structure that made the conflict profitable has been permanently disabled. Commander Park Ji-ho's voice was cold as deep space. Both civilizations now face a simple choice. Learn to live in peace or face complete social collapse. Most intelligent beings choose survival. Old historian Kef leaned forward in his floating chair, his ancient eyes bright with terrible understanding. You did not create peace, you made war impossible. Correct, confirmed Ambassador Lee. Peace is not the absence of fighting, Doctor. Peace is the absence of the ability to fight. We have removed that ability permanently. The council members looked at each other with expressions mixing gratitude and growing horror. The implications were becoming clear, and many did not like what they saw. What happened to the military leaders? Asked Dr. Mora, her tentacles curling nervously. The weapons manufacturers? The politicians who built their careers on this conflict? Specialist Yoon Tai-min spoke for the first time since their arrival at the station. They are learning to find new occupations. Those who cannot adapt to peaceful work are being judged by their own people. We provided complete records of how these leaders profited while their citizens suffered. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the human method became clear. They had not ended the war through diplomacy or military victory. They had ended it by systematically destroying the social, economic, and political structures that made war possible, then left the populations to deal with their former leaders. Reports were already coming in from both former war zones. On Velkari Prime, angry crowds had stormed the mansion of General Vorth after learning he owned 17 luxury homes, while soldiers died with broken equipment. On Theron Central, Admiral Kex was facing trial for selling military supplies to private collectors while her own forces went without food. You are not peacemakers, whispered Vel, finally understanding what they had summoned. You are destroyers. Ambassador Lee's expression did not change. You called us because you thought we created peace. We do not. We are a species that ends things, wars, conflicts, problems. We end them completely and permanently. She turned toward the exit, her team falling into formation behind her. The Velkari-Theron War is finished. It will never restart because the systems that supported it no longer exist. Your galaxy is at peace. At what cost? Called out Kef as the humans reached the chamber doors. Ambassador Lee paused without turning around. The same cost peace always. Demands, Doctor. The destruction of those who profit from war. As the humans departed, their ship disappearing as mysteriously as it had arrived, the council members sat in stunned silence. The galaxy was indeed at peace, but it was a peace built on the complete destruction of everything that had made war possible. More reports flowed in over the following days. Populations across both former empires were discovering the full extent of their leaders' betrayal. Military contractors were being destroyed by angry mobs who learned their children had died using defective equipment, so executives could buy vacation planets. Politicians who had sent millions to die were facing revolutionary courts. The war was over. But in its place was something that disturbed the Council even more: the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy existed a species capable of reshaping entire civilizations with surgical precision, and they had been watching, waiting, for someone desperate enough to call them. "What have we done?" whispered Counselor Yara. The question echoed through the chamber, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. They had summoned the only species that ends wars, and learned too late that ending was not the same as healing. In the darkness of space, the human vessel set course for home, leaving behind a galaxy at peace and a council that would never again mistake destruction for mercy.